And this was in about the middle of the war, 1960. I got to Vietnam in 1968 in April. And I went home in 1969 in April. So it was 1 year. I did a 1 year tour. And the gas chamber, like you saw that on the movie, the gas chambers, we went through, in basic training, they would teach you how to use your gas mask. And then they would put you into, they would line you up, and you'd walk into the gas chamber, and there'd be some other soldiers in there, the instructors with gas masks on, and then they would have you take your gas mask off for a minute or two. And then, of course, you couldn't hold your breath that long, so then you could put your gas mask back on. But you got gas pretty bad, so. And if you did what, you probably says like there is on that one video where we're coming out of the gas chamber. Yeah, yeah, we're coughing and throwing up. And so, but I went through I went through a gas chamber in basic training, a gas chamber in Fort Polk, Louisiana, which is advanced training, and then they put us through the gas chamber again in Hawaii, where I was training there. So, and in Hawaii, we trained for 5 months on the island, and we would leave Schofield Barracks and we'd go back into the mountains of Hawaii, and we'd divide up into different teams and play Army for 4 days. And then on Friday, we'd go out on Monday, and we'd come back on Friday. And we would have blanks in our rifles, sorts of things. Whew.
Or just a couple memorable experiences.
Well, war is full of memorial experiences. So, let me tell you a little what it was like, so you can get a picture. So, being an infantry soldier, we would have a main base in Vietnam. And mine was in a place called Southern I Corps, about 70 miles south of a city called Da Nang. We were near this little city called Duc Pho on the coast. And that was the base we worked out of. And we would leave there and go out on patrols, and we'd go out on patrols. Sometimes it'd be 3 or 4 days, sometimes a week, sometimes a month. One time it was 50 days, and so we wouldn't come back for those. Now, we went out in all kinds of weather. This was rice-paddied country that was down in the lowlands, and oftentimes we walked from the rice-paddy country all the way up to the mountains and in the mountains and the jungle in Vietnam. And we had our packs on our backs, and everything that we lived with was in those packs. And I'll show you one in a few minutes. So along with in that pack was ammunition, toothbrush, toothpaste, a landmine, hand grenades, machine gun ammunition, water, food, everything you needed to live with. So, and that's the way you survived out of that pack. And you had boots on that had holes in them because you're always walking in the rice paddy waters. And the dangers was the minute that you stepped outside, let's say the wire from that base, was they were landmines and holes called punji pits that were covered over that you'd fall down in, about 18 feet. You usually had spears in it or some type of explosives. And then there were snipers, and you know what snipers are, correct? The guy who waits in the bushes a long ways off, shoots at you whenever he feels like it. And then there were ambushes. Oftentimes we'd be ambushed by the enemy, and we would never see them. We'd be in the jungle or something to that effect, and bullets would just start falling. One of my most memorable experiences that I like telling this story, we had been on a patrol, and we had a job to do on these patrols we're doing, and that was We were moving into villages, and we were relocating the people in the villages. It was called repatriation. So we would walk out from our fire base 3 or 4 miles towards the ocean where the villages were, and we would find all of their supplies, the people, the kids, dogs, cats, pigs, chickens, everything we could, and we'd put them on helicopters. And they would fly these people to a different location and set them up to live there. Now, they didn't like that, but the enemy was using them for their supplies. The enemy would come in and steal their food and take over their lives, and in all reality, if they didn't go along with it, the enemy murdered them. They would go into a village and usually get the head of the village and bring them out and give them orders for what they wanted them to do, and if they didn't want to go along with a communist way of life, they were either shot or they lost their heads. So it was a pretty brutal situation. So our job that day was to load these people up, and then after that we took off and we went towards another village area, probably 3 or 4 miles away, and we were going to set up an all-night ambush. There was 30 of us. That's a platoon of men, infantrymen, 4 squads of about 8 men, and we never had full squads because somebody would be sick or something. So this particular day, it was just about to get dark, it was dusk, and we were waiting next side this village, and because this was our pre-ambush site. We were going to go in an ambush that night, and we would always do a pre-site first. So we went there to make the enemy think that that was going to be our ambush site. So just as it was starting to get dark, this little girl came out of the village and warned us. And she began to jump around and wave her arms, and in broken Vietnamese slang, she was telling us all the children were leaving the village. So when we noticed that all the children was leaving, and then all the people also, one of the guys I was with went over and informed the leadership, and we moved out rapidly to down the beach about 500 yards away, and where we were sitting was just blown to pieces. So that little girl, for some reason, warned us, and I've always wondered why. Because she was probably 6 years old, and just made it very emphatic that we were in danger. And so that story continues on, because even though we lived through the night, they searched for us all night. And they waited for us in the morning across rice paddies, and they opened fire on us again. Let's just say there were a lot of people dying at very close distances. And it was brutal and life-changing. And it's something that never leaves your mind. You always remember it. And the brutality of it is not comprehended. War is awful. Even though what you see on TV and the way they show it looks like heroes, war, actually, the good thing that you get from war is you learn how to be a good pressure, and you learn how to obey orders, and you learn that you can survive. The battlefield would change. It was either in the flat rice paddy country, where there would just be acres and acres of rice paddies, and sometimes the rice paddies would be dry, and there would just be dry ground. Other times they would be about 6 or 8 inches of water over these large fields that the rice grew. And the rice at some point got to be about this high, and then they would cut it. So usually in the rice paddy type of areas, you were hampered by what was called the Viet Cong, which was the Vietnamese communists, and they would either hit you with small ambushes, or you'd be stepping on landmines or something like that. Now, in my experience, we did have one battle in an area that had rice paddies. It had a hill. There was hills there. There were several villages around, and they most of the time, and this was with the North Vietnamese soldiers who come down from the north, and they were supporting the Viet Cong, and they had decided to fight us, which was very, very rare, because most of the time they only wanted to fight us on their terms. And so for some reason or another, they thought that they could win this battle. So we brought in, let's see, 40 pieces of armor, which is called APCs, Amphibious Personnel Carriers. And this piece of armor would have a flamethrower on it. They all had about 3 machine guns on them. And so we started off in a line with 40 pieces of armor lined up, and about 300 yards away in the tree line, the enemy was hidden. Now, when all this starts, you don't know how many enemy there is or anything. And we fought them for 2 days. Well, the rice paddies create a real problem. Generally, you're sniped at. The only thing you can do when a sniper starts in on you is get down the rice paddies. You got to duck down. The rice paddies have little dikes that separate the water in the field. If you was fortunate enough to where you could hit the water or the mud behind that dike, then you had something to hide behind. Otherwise, you just had to lay in the water as well as you could. Needless to say, when you got up, you were covered in mud and water, and it was usually about 115 degrees, and it was absolutely miserable conditions. And you'd wait the sniper out. Pretty soon he'd get nervous, and because he'd figure you'd call artillery on him, and slowly you'd get up, and if he didn't start shooting at you again, you'd start moving. So, but this is all extremely dangerous. You're in the open, and they're not. It's like the trees start shooting at you. And what most people don't realize is it's hard to tell where a bullet comes from. You know, if somebody was to shoot at us from here, unless we saw it hit the ground, we wouldn't know where it came from. So now, when you're in the jungle, I've been ambushed 4 or 5 times in the jungle, never seen anybody. All of a sudden, bullets just started going everywhere. The only thing you can do in a situation like that is get on the ground as fast as you can and start shooting at the trees. And that was the way they wanted to fight the war. They wanted to hit and run. But every now and then, we would either get them boxed in, or they would decide to fight us. We had airstrikes that was available to us. We could get jets coming, fighter jets and bombers, and they would support us. We had artillery that would shoot. Generally, it'd be a 105 millimeter artillery piece. It could shoot about 8 miles.
It's like a cannon.
Like a cannon, right. And then they also had another large gun on a track. It was called a 175, and it could shoot up to 20 miles. Now, when we took off on our maneuvers, we tried to stay within range of artillery for support. And so every night we would call in artillery around our perimeter. We'd set up a perimeter in a circle, and we'd have a guy that was called a forward observer, and he'd call in 4 rounds around our perimeter. And these would be marker rounds. They wouldn't explode. They'd fire them, you could hear them coming from miles away, and they would, like, let's say we set up a perimeter right here. Well, he'd hit one over there, he'd hit one over there, and right behind us. And then he'd back them off a little bit, because when they go off, they are absolutely deadly. So, but if we got hit in the middle of the night and we were being overrun, we'd call in artillery in those positions. So we had artillery sitting in the air strikes. And then we had armor, which was the armor that was available to us was called amphibious personnel carriers, or APCs. We would ride on them, or they would come with us. Oftentimes we'd go on a mission with them, and the infantry, we'd get up on top of the armor, and we would go to wherever the battle or the action was with the armor. And also, there were tanks. But the tanks usually, it was very easy for them to get stuck in the rice paddies, in those situations, so we had them, but at times it was very hard to use them. So now, besides that, the type of weapons that we used personally were all fully automatic, which in that day it was M16s, and you see them today. The soldiers still use them today, and that was a rifle that held a 20-round clip, and on full automatic, which is 20 rounds, if you fired it on full automatic and didn't let up, the first bullet wouldn't hit, the first empty cartridge wouldn't hit the ground until the gun would be empty. That's how fast it fired. So, but to use that weapon, you would fire short 3-round bursts if you was in contact with the enemy. If you or you would take aim and shoot 1 round. They also had some M14 rifles. Those were a higher caliber rifle, and we usually use that if we were going to set up in a condition where we would be the snipers. And then we had a M60 machine gun, which is a 30 caliber machine gun, weighs 23 pounds, and it holds 100 rounds of bullets, belt bullets, and it can shoot about 800 yards, and it, between the bullets, we got it loaded, and got it weighed 35 pounds. And that's what I carried, and I was in the machine gun crew, and every third day I would carry the machine gun. So, bazooka-like guns. And we had we had a rocket launcher that was called a Law. It weighed 3 pounds, about this long, about that big around, and you'd pull a pin on it and stretch it out, and it was recoilless. You'd lay it on your shoulder, aim it at the target, and squeeze the rubber trigger, and it could fire a rocket out to anywhere to 1,000 to 1,500 yards. And it could penetrate up to 9 inches of solid steel. They were very accurate, and we carried them often. They were very useful weapons. Now, being an infantry soldier, we spent very little time in the camps. They always had us in the field looking for the enemy. We slept in the field every night, rain or shine. We slept 6 days in a typhoon. We had 9-mile-an-hour winds. And we had these little air mattresses that what we do is we take ponchos. I'll show you a poncho. Each of us had a poncho. We'd wear it in the rain. We were always being rained on, because it rained every day about 4 o'clock, it seemed like. And when the monsoon seasons hit, it rained all the time. But we'd wear a poncho to keep us from getting wet to some degree. And then we would take these ponchos at night and we'd snap them together and make a little tent. Make a little pup tent, like Boy Scout tent. And we'd have an air mattress, and we'd sleep on this air mattress. We never changed we got new clothes about every 40 to 50 days. We never changed our clothes. We very seldom got showers. Our skin would grow with what was called jungle rot, because the humidity was so humid and hot. And eventually we'd find a creek or something, and we'd get a bath, and we could wash this jungle rot off, and we'd have brand new skin underneath. so the lifestyle conditions were just absolutely horrible. Besides that, you were always putting insect repellent on you to keep the mosquitoes away. And we had to take pills during the day. Every day we'd take a pill to keep you from getting malaria, and it would keep you from getting 2 or 3 types of malaria, but there were more than 2 or 3 types. And so I had malaria. Most of the men in my platoon had malaria. That's a disease that raises, you get a high fever, gets you up to about 106 degrees. If they don't get stopped, you get brain damage, get pneumonia, and you die. It usually takes about 30 days to get over it. And you usually have it for the next 20 years. Once I came home, I had malaria 3 times. So those are some of the dynamics. It was in cans. And you'd get ham and lima beans, or you get a can of peaches, maybe you get a couple of cookies that were as hard as, you could use it for some type of ninja knife. That's how hard they were. So, and you got different types. There was 12 different types of meals: ham and lima beans, spicy beef and meatballs. And so when you'd take off, you'd get yourself a 12 pack of this food, which was very heavy, and you'd put it in your rucksack. And that's how you ate. And every now and then, and even a lot of the times, a helicopter would bring us a hot meal at night. They'd bring it from the fire base. And so that's what the food was like. The food was lousy. So you're eating out of a can all the time. Water, when we drink our water, we got our water, either they'd bring us water, or we'd get water out of a river, or we'd get it out of the rice paddies. We'd always have an iodine pill we'd put in the water. And the water tasted horrible. I mean, the buffaloes were in the field and everything else. It was bad water. So, and usually we carried anywhere from 3 to 4 quarts of water apiece, because we drank a lot of water. We're always sweating. In my company, there were orders that came down that we had to pull an ambush every 3rd night. So that means we would hunt for the enemy all day, and at night, there'd be about 8 of us go out together, and we'd find a location along a path, and we would wait for the enemy to come by. And we'd wait there all night long. We'd set up landmines, which were claymores, which is an anti-personnel mine that you set off with a clicker that would send a spark to it that would cause it to go off. And so we'd have claymore mines, hand grenades, and our automatic weapons, and we'd lay there all night long waiting for the enemy to come. And so very seldom did the ambushes get set off, but every now and then they did. And it was absolutely excruciating to make yourself stay awake all night. And meanwhile, there would be snakes, you're worried about the enemy, mosquitoes, wondering how you got there and when you was going to get to go home. So we do that every 3rd night. And then the next day we'd go back, we'd have to march all day, and the next day do it again. So physically, we did that probably for the first 2 to 3 months that we're in country, and it just wore us out. We were physically exhausted most of the time. You couldn't tell. They all looked the same. If they were shooting at you, they were the enemy. But other than that, there was no way. They'd be your friends during the day. They'd offer you water or something like that. But at night, they'd be out there ready to ambush you. And you could not tell at all who the enemy was, unless you were fighting the North Vietnamese soldiers that were generally up in the mountains, and they had a soldier's uniform on. But, so if you were fighting them, you could tell who they were. But they usually didn't let you know where they were, as we wouldn't let them know where we were. So that was it. It was a very hard situation. Yes, I did. Um, I'll probably leave that alone. That happened in very close fighting situations. The killing was very brutal, uh, and it was ferocious. It was. I lost most of my hearing during that battle, and it's even though I've wrote about it, I've never described those situations. First of all, most people cannot understand the dynamics of war. And Hollywood has so made war that it's almost glorious. It's not glorious. It's absolutely horrible. Even when the enemy is dying, he still has a mom and a dad and kids and a wife, brothers and sisters. You know, he's another person. But what happens during war, you have to forfeit your compassion, or otherwise you can't fight, because you can't fight and kill somebody you really care about. So part of the dynamics that is awful is, as time goes on, you become hardened to the conditions of war, and you lose your compassion, and you're a pretty tough soldier at that point. So at that point, you can engage the enemy, and in the process of getting there. And it takes a while to not be a new guy, and when you're a new guy, it's the most dangerous part of your life. That's one of the things that we did learn was, and you have to learn to face your fears. It doesn't matter whether you're afraid or not. The enemy's afraid. You're afraid. You're both killing each other. There's no way that you can't not be afraid. Now, once a battle starts, you get busy, and then the fear fades away. But the anticipation of the battle or war or ambush is crazy. It's absolutely insane. From the war, life was very different. I'd lost my compassion, and war makes you dirty. It's like working on a car engine or something. You got to fix it. But in the process of fixing it, you get all greasy. Well, that's the way war is. When you're in war, you're actually the soldiers during the fighting. People are being killed, they're losing their arms and their legs, you're exhausted, you wish you were home. The dynamics are awful. So that wounds your soul. Now, you just have to take that and hide it. Just push it down and push it down. Now, maybe if you've got a job back in the rear and you're not facing your fears all the time. But once you're out there on the battle front, your lifestyle will change, has changed drastically. Life isn't any fun. Every day is a lot of work. Every day is very scary. Every night is very scary. And there's times that you get used to it, but you're in and out of it, in and out of it. And so you have to be brave. Now, for me, I was a Christian when I was in the war. And that meant a lot to me. I didn't think about why God's doing this. I knew man was doing this. This was us. This is what we as people are doing to each other. And when I got home, life was different. It was very, very hard. Everybody here, there was no war going on. They didn't even know it. And I was in the war one day, and I was home the next. And At that time, when I came home, it was a very unpopular war. Nobody liked us as soldiers. They badmouthed us on TV. They didn't shake our hands and say, welcome home. It was all bad. And it was because of the way the United States was at the time and their political systems, and that they didn't stand up for it. But in Vietnam, that was the last country to ever fall to communism. But on the soldier like I was, coming home was very hard. But at the same time, we adjusted well, the best that we could, and really we came home and went to work. And that was the right thing for us to do. But people didn't like us as soldiers. And so it was a hard thing to come home to. But for me, when I came home, I'm 21 when I get home. I'm actually 22. And I really needed something. And I turned to the Bible, and I went to this, because I was a Christian then, even though I was fighting. I went to this scripture that I found it because I was just so hungry for something that would make a difference in my life. And this is what got me started, and it just made such a huge difference. So, and what I found this scripture right here. Let's see, go back. It just absolutely meant the world to me. And this was in Isaiah 55, and it says, "Come, all you that are thirsty." Boy, my soul was thirsty. 21 years old, 22 years old, hardened heart. Life was shallow. And it says, "Come, all you that are thirsty, come to the water. And you who have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without cost." And when I found this scripture, that meant that God's asking me to come to him. He'll help me. He'll feed my soul. He'll be with me. And so when I read this gave me so much hope. It was just so powerful. So every day, I'd read the Bible and I'd pray. It doesn't have to be a big, long prayer or anything like that, but that's what I did. And that's what began bringing me away from the war. And it took years now. The wars, it goes on in a soldier's life for years and years at night. But this sort of dynamics was what helped me in my marriage, helped me in my job, and helped me deal with the residue of war. And in the book that I wrote, it's called Through My Eyes, A Story of Hope. Maybe you've seen a copy of it. You have. And that's what it really settles down to. Because we come home from war with a stained soul, with no compassion. And we need to be filled up. We need a reason to live again. And that's what God did for me. Jesus, he renewed my spirit over time. How'd you like to see some of the stuff that I got there?
Sure.
It's kind of like... On a flak jacket. This will not stop a bullet, but it will stop shrapnel from a hand grenade. See how that fits? There you go. Get your arm in there. It's kind of hard to do, especially if you're running a mortar attack. Okay, all right. So you're a little bit, that one almost fits you. Now, this will stop shrapnel from a hand grenade. So, on top of that, come on, slide her in here. This is what your backpack's like. There you go. All right, you got a shovel right back here. And that's an entrenching tool for digging your foxhole at night. All your food is in there, Then On this side over here, this is your gas mask. Here's your bedding, right? Here's a little blanket that you wear. Now, on top of that, we'll hang a few hanger nades off of you here. All right? So you get some of that on there, get you hooked up with that. All right? Usually like to carry about 4 of those. Then, put a pistol belt on it. Take that and put it around. Let's get it underneath that. There you go. You almost got it. You got it?
Extend it.
There you go. Whoops. Let's try it one more time. All right. There. All right. So you're going to buckle this up. My golly, this will fit you. I can't get it on me anymore. So now that's kind of drooping. These canteens are full. And this can be, there's your bayonet and your knife. You're going to pack ammo for the machine gunner. You're going to have 3 of these. Everybody's got to carry ammo for the machine gunner. So now, I usually carried 3 of these. Let's move that over there a little bit for you. So now you're all set up. You've got everything. Take a look at your dad here. You've got everything but your rifle or your machine gun and food. So that's kind of what it's like. And this thing you carried with you all the time. This is what you slept out on. Now, this is 100 rounds of machine gun ammo. This is called 7.62, and if you're the machine gunner, you usually had 300 rounds of this. You had 100 in your machine gun and 2 across your back, and then everybody else also carried ammo for you. And we'll get that off. Your canteens are empty, but usually you carried anywhere from 2 quarts to 4 quarts of water every day. There we go. This here is actually, as you can see right here, this is your poncho. This is what you use to make your bed. You know, this is how you took another one of these and you made a tent. And this little lightweight blanket right here is the only thing you had to sleep with. Plus there's an air mattress that you have. This is all original equipment. Here's your entrenching tool. You know, you use that all the time. Either digging a foxhole or finding somewhere to go to the bathroom. And then of course these, after a while, this here's pretty lightweight. This one is. That one's heavier. These weigh about 12 pounds. After a while we got to where we wouldn't wear these because they're so heavy and hot. So, that. So that's what the gear's like. There we go. So you got any more questions?
Yeah.